Hello, everyone. This is Darren Lester with Madcap Toys. I want to wish you belated happy Halloween and an early happy Thanksgiving Day in case I, for some reason, do not get a video on. It has been very busy. This time of the year is extremely busy for us at Madcap Toys. Basically, September, the 1st of September through, I would say, the first week of May is extremely busy for us. We do a lot of interviews every couple of months or so with bloggers or people that's writing little articles here, there, or videos or what have you. And we don't do those from basically September through May because of the busy season. And we are thankful that God's allowed us to be blessed this year, and we are up above our usual amounts that we sell. And we want to thank you, our customers, for that. Whether you shop at our eBay store that uh, we have, or you shop at madcaptoys.com. We appreciate your support. We appreciate what you do. We'd like to thank you also for helping us to support the Indian missions down in Pueblo, for the Pueblo Indians down in New Mexico this year. We thank you and want to give you a hearty, heartfelt thank you for that. But today our video is going to deal with what do you think of the various kinds of toys that Star Wars is producing. And this is not a Star Wars rant, as a lot of videos have been that you'll see on TV through the various guys and gals that have something negative to say about Star Wars. Look, the fact of the matter is, a lot of the Star Wars stuff they're putting out there, yes, they have a social justice warrior angle going on, a political behind the scenes motive behind it, and all this garbage that they're pushing. But I'm not talking about those idiots. I'm not talking about issues that are just basically things that you and I as collectors cannot help or control, but this is something we can help and we can control. I have here today with me basically a sand trooper. And of course you can look at this and say, well, this is a later variant of the stormtrooper that they just basically added on from the Power of the Force, Power Jedi, etc. and so forth era. And they basically, he doesn't have his gun, but they basically, this is when they started beefing everybody up to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger compared to the regular Star Wars that we have from the 70s, 80s, and even the early, I want to say not quite early 90s, but right before the 90s hit. What do you think of this? Do you like these kinds of guys, or do you like the guys that went into the Clone Trooper era? The articulation here, for instance, you see you got one, you got two, you got let's see, 3, 4, 5, 6 points of articulation, which on the basic action figures you had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which, you know, one more point. And then you had later on in various variants where they would get down, they'd be able to bend their knees, they'd be able to move their arms and point their guns like they was laying down taking sniping action compared to most of these guys you're just sitting there standing them up, whether it be on a peg hook or it be on some little platform where somebody can stand it up and move around or put it in a pose and a diorama for them. They're just good for standing or aiming their gun at somebody like they're going to get shot. These kinds of warriors remind me a lot of, or stormtroopers, sand troopers, they remind me of a lot of the British and the French and the Europeans back in the days in the 1800s, 1700s, where you'd have all kinds of little armies standing by each other. They'd have somebody take aim, give the command, and a whole group of armies would fire at each other, both sides, or however many there was. And that's what this reminds me of. That's what also a lot of the Star Wars action figures reminded me of in the early 70s and 80s. That is why at one time I really fell in love with G.I. Joe, because you was able to bend the elbows, you was able to bend the knees, and you could take and put them in poses where they could hide if you was playing various games and things, or with your friends. You could hide them where these guys were up, standing up, having to take shots like bam, like that. You could hide these guys like this, basically, and they could snipe at people, or they could get behind their forts or whatever the case was, bunker houses, and they could take little pot shots of these guys, duck, cover. These guys can't. They pretty much got to lay down to take a shot or stand up. But what do you think of these action figures compared to a lot of the action figures you get today? Now, when I'm asking you about action figures today, do you think that these action figures had enough articulation? Do you think that they had enough, I don't know, representation? For instance, the facial features, the body design, or do you think they just beefed up too much? Because we all know from a lot of us that are either too short, too tall, too fat, too small, that not everybody's going to be a Hercules or a Arnold Schwarzenegger or a Sylvester Stallone walking around in these kind of outfits. I myself preferred the skinnier Star Wars original vintage variant from the New Hope, the Empire Strikes Back, and even the Return of the Jedi. I did not get so much into the Power of the Force action figures, even though they look, a little bit better as far as features. I did not get into them as much because everything was going into the buff stuff. It's like we had the WWE all of a sudden come into the Star Wars G.I. Joe universe. G.I. Joe's equivalent would have been the G.I. Joe Extreme, where everybody went from being the 3 3/4 inch to I think it was like 5 6 inches at the time. I've got some in the store here, but they went to where they all became Hercules on steroids. Excuse me. And to me, that was no fun. Granted, I was getting older, and basically our toys went from being useful little play guys to where they'd be into diorama things. But now we've got back into basically doing miniature battles, and a lot of times we will use, for the sake of cost, these kinds of action figures, whatever series they are, and use them for our miniatures. And we have a group of people that do game and play with us in those areas, and several people that want to join. And we have our rules, we've set it up. But do you like these for that kind of stuff? Do you like them just to display? Did you think that they overdid it by the width and the girth and the height on these things? I mean, they're still basically 3 3/4, not quite 4 sometimes on some of the action figures. But do you think this is the way they should have gone and stayed? Or do you like it where they went into, let's say, the Geonosian battle, where they brought in the battle droids that they had 15,000 points of articulation, or the guys that had, I think it was like 8 points of articulation at one time. Now again, please remember we're talking this style of action figure or earlier, the New Hope on, not the Black Series, not the special collector's editions, but these kinds of guys. Do you like these guys? Do you use these guys for anything other than standing around? Do you use them for gaming? Do you use them for just to say, okay, well, this is a sand trooper. I've got other styles and variants of sand troopers, and I use them just as army builders. I mean, I'm not trying to say this is a bad style. I don't care for it as much, but man, it fits the bill if you need it, right? Especially if you're like me and you got an army that you're building. For instance, I've got currently 2 Death Stars. I used to have up to 4 Death Stars. Okay, the Death Stars, I never did as a kid. When I had a Death Star, my dad bought me one, and I really loved it. But I never did have enough stormtroopers. I got up to 2, and then 3, and then 4. And I thought, man, I had an army going on when I was a kid when I got 4 stormtroopers. But it was hard for me as a kid at the time to get an army of stormtroopers like I have today. Because when you got another stormtrooper, that all you're going to do is basically have go around in the, vehicle, whatever the vehicle may be, the Imperial troop transport, or stand guard at the door at the Death Star, or go in and stand and look around in the cantina. It was hard to want to buy umpteen of these, especially when it's hard to find, and I'm talking the other stormtroopers, of course, from the originals, and not buy Bespin Han Solo, or Bespin Leia, or, Hoth Luke, or whatever the case may be. But nowadays, I have got quite a few armies. I've got probably in one Death Star, probably about 20 stormtroopers. Now, granted, a lot of them sitting around doing nothing, just taking a coffee break, even though I don't have a coffee room for them. But I like to have mass stormtroopers. I bought, just a couple weeks ago, about 45 stormtroopers. And that cost me a little bit of money. But they're actually clone troopers, so take that back. I want to make sure I got it as good. But to me, stormtroopers, clone troopers, sand troopers, Hoth troopers, etc., they're all under the same umbrella with me for stormtroopers. Okay, they're a variant. But to me, I bought them. And again, I bought them for an army building purpose. Whether we take and we use them for miniatures, or we use them for a diorama, or we use them for our stop motion videos that we're wanting to work on. And I had a guy ask me a question that I know that's down here in Spencer, Indiana. I said, when are you going to get those stop motion videos actually on? Well, guys, I'm going to be quite honest with you. Many of you guys know that we sold my house to my son. We had a store. We closed that building down because we had landlord issues. And he never wanted to fix anything, but he always wanted to take money. and the money was pretty good that he's taken. But we sold my house to my son, because he sat there and he has 2 children, and we wanted to buy, and we're working on it, buying our own land and building our own home, dream home, and going to build a store on the piece of land that we purchased, Lord willing. And, you know, our goal is to sit there and to do that and get a little studio where I get the right lighting, I get the right equipment, I get it to where you can actually see it, and we don't have these little crackles like I can see on the screen right now. And right now I'm using the camera off of the computer here, the laptop, and a lot of times my videos, my wife will complain and say, well, you know, it's cool, but your video doesn't look the greatest. Well, I know. I'm using sometimes my stop motion camera, so you can sort of see why we're sort of holding up on that. And we want to make sure when we do it too that the sounds are good, the quality is good, and when we talk you understand it and that you enjoy it. And I want you to see the action figures, because the idea of the video is for fun, is to encourage kids to play, is to encourage kids to get off the games and get off of the computer for a little bit, and to quote unquote open up their minds, to where a lot of times if I seen commercials, or we used to get a thing called the Sears catalog, you know, you'd see a stormtrooper standing there pointing his gun at Leia or Luke, or both of them, or Ben Kenobi fighting Darth Vader or whatever. The idea was to get it to where you had something in your mind, this is what they did and this is what you can do, and we try to reenact things that we had seen on TV or cartoons, or we come up with our own worlds, because there was a group of us. I played with guys like my brother Barry and my brother Chris, our neighbor Melanie. She was one of the few girls in our area, and she became basically a tomboy because of a lot of us. And then, you know, we played with people like Pat Croxton, Phil, and Chris Sanders, the 2 brothers there. And we had a few other guys here and there that we play with, you know, like Drew Jackson once on Blue Moon, and, you know, just various people, Monty, Craig, etc., various guys like that we play with. You know, we had our whole little group, and Byron Mack, etc. I could go on. I'm hoping I'm not missing anybody, you know, by just shooting it out there real quick. But guys, you know, I had a great time playing with them, so if I forgot you, I'm sorry. Just put yourself down on the list and we'd add you to it. But that's what made our day. You know, we had so many guys that created and made things imaginative, and it just was awesome. And the originals were great to have. Like I said, this is a question I want to ask people. Do you think that these action figures were too buff? Do you think that they worked for what you as a child needed them for, or you as a collector needed or wanted to use them for? And my ultimate end of it is comparing even this kind of thing from Power of the Force, Power of the Jedi, Shadows of the Empire, etc., and so forth. Comparing those kind of toys there in that generation and the previous generation and the prequels to now, where you've got Kathleen Kennedy and all the guys over Lucasfilm and Star Wars running the show. Do you honestly think that the action figures are lacking something? Now, again, and I know the video is getting up to 13, 14, 15 minutes here. I'm an army builder man. I build armies of things because I use them for various things, from gaming, videos, etc. But do you feel that the toys that they're producing today at Hasbro, not Kenner, Hasbro, is of the same quality? And even though sometimes they've got better painting going on and things, do you feel like they're useful? And again, we're not talking the Black Series or collector special editions, etc. I'm talking basic Hasbro produced stuff, whether it be like the Lincoln toys or just the Hasbro produced toys of Star Wars, even Joe's if you can find them a lot of times, for the average collector or kid. I myself feel like a lot of times they're lacking. The Black Series is great, but a lot of the stuff that they've got, except for the Army Builder stuff, I don't feel too impressed and a need to buy it over one, because I don't see a value. I don't see an inherent value in the things. But I'm curious, what do you think about them? Did you have an experience as a child where you built an army and you just threw them all together? Did you have as a child a image in your mind where you would like to go with your collection? And does the toys that you see Hasbro producing today, or Star Wars allowing them to produce or copyright with them to produce? Do you feel like that's meeting your collector need for your collector diorama or collection in general? I personally feel like we're lacking in play sets, true play sets. I'm not talking about stamping out Hoth and the base of that 50 times from the Star Wars Jawa. I can't think of the name of it, but the Jawa Sandcrawler base. You know, I'm talking about a different base. I'm not talking about Jabba the Hutt's droid base, where you also had the original Star Wars droid factory. I don't want 50 items give to me just painted in different colors out of the same mode. I want actual bases that are unique. For instance, you had the Imperial Hoth base, you had the Rebel Hoth base. I mean, things of that generation or ilk. You had the Death Star, you had the Star Destroyer, you had the Falcon. We don't need 50,000 Falcons, guys. We need, you know, real bases and real vehicles. We don't need 50 types of TIE fighters just with different paint schemes or X-Wings. But anyway, I don't want to rant. Go on. But I thank you for watching this video. Tell me, what do you think about the style of action figures today? Whether you use them for army building, or you buy Ahsoka, or you buy any kind of action figure from any generation except for the collector's editions. Do you think that they're meeting the need that you have for your collector's toys and for your children's collections to play with as well? All right, then my name is Darren Lester. Thank you. If you would, don't forget to clap that bell there. Bing! And follow us along so that you get every notification that we send out that we put on a new video. Also, be sure to subscribe, and I appreciate your comments because we would like to keep up with you and to know what you think and what kind of videos that you would like to have. And eventually, I will show you some of my Army collection. I will show you various other toy reviews. And I'll just show you the store in general when we get the chance and we get the building up and going. All right, have a great one, guys. Darren Lester signing off.